On this episode of the SAP Business by Design supply chain training, we're going to be working with purchase request. So, from my experience with SAP solution, I've observed that a lot of users who have been privileged to train had have had issues with understanding the difference between the purchase request and a request for quotation. Today, we're going to be looking at the difference between an RFQ and a purchase request. We're going to actually talk about the difference between these two important documents when it comes to procurement process. So first, let's talk about RFQ. So request for quotation is actually a document that is used for soliciting price for a product or a service. It's actually a document that is sent to your supplier for them to send their quote for a specific product price or service price. And many organizations have their use cases for the request for quotation. In some cases, might want to use uh, the RFQ as a basis for assessing the cost of a project. And in some cases, they might want to use this as a starting point for knowing the cost of a budget. It might also be for a basis of changing uh, their current supplier or vendor for a specific product or service if there's a need. While purchase request, on the other hand, is an internal document used by the procurement department to manage all kinds of demand for a product or a service within the organization. These demands are actually demands that are sourced externally. Purchase requests are documents that are subject to approval processes. So when a requester release a request and the system there's an approval flow for that was set up on the system, the owner of the document has to wait for the document to be approved. So which in this case means a purchase requests are always subjected to approval based on the company's approach to this some of the requests that are placed. So there are some rules that you can set up within the SAP Business by Design to manage approval process for most of your purchase requests. And this also applies to the purchase order. Today, we're going to be looking at how to manage purchase requests, how to create a request, and how requests are being released. There are two types of purchase requests that is very important that we understand. We have the purchase request for materials and we have the purchase request for service. These two requests are actually requests that is being managed by the system. Also, there are different ways of creating a purchase request. We have requests that are created during the MRP process, which is the material requirement planning process. There are also requests that are created using the shopping cart process. Also, we can create a direct purchase request, but please note, you cannot create a purchase request for service using the direct purchase request method. On this episode, we're going to look at how to create a direct purchase request uh, using some of the material we've created in the past episode. So if you want to learn how to create a material, please go to the episode of the material, managing material in SAP Business by Design, and you will see some of the processes that need relevant processes that needs to be activated in this in that episode. On today's episode, we're going to take a look at a full details of how we can create a purchase request for material directly in the system. In the next episode, we're going to look at how to create a purchase request for service using the shopping cart, and we can use that process uh, to see how we can use some confirmation or convert the purchase request to a purchase order. So all these requests are going to be treated accordingly from episode to episode. But for now, let's go into the demo and see how some of these uh, documents are created and managed. So to get started, we need to navigate to the purchase request and order work center. And here we can either click the overview to see some of the information there. So here in the overview, we can have access to the purchase request and order, where we can click on the report. We can also see we have purchase order. We'll enter the episode of the purchase order, and we're going to talk on how to create and manage purchase order. Then we have some information here, like the return to suppliers, if there's a need for us to return to supplier. Then there's an analytic view of the list of purchase requests that have been created so far in the system. So if we navigate back to the work center, let's go to the purchase request to see the list of purchase requests we have in the system. I'm sure most of us we are familiar with the interface of the SAP Business by Design. So we have the list of reports. This purchase request report we are looking at currently is actually a list of purchase requests with open task. These are requests that have not been completed. Their task has not been completed. Either they've not been received, released, or they've not been um, converted to an order. Okay, so if we click on the drill down report, we can see some of the status here. Like if we want to see the list of open purchase requests, if we want to see purchase request in sourcing, if we want to see all purchase requests and requests for an order in the next 3 days. Okay, so I'm going to click on all requests and click on this view to see the list of all requests. So these are the list of all the purchase requests we have in the system. So if you highlight any of these requests, below information shows some of the details of the request. So some of this information you have here are the supplier name. If it happens that a supplier is actually assigned to the request, then we have the product ID, we have the product description, the product category, if it's a service or a material that belongs to the category, then the time, the open quantity. So the difference between the open quantity is this open quantity are quantity that are actually not have not been released, or an order has not been raised on this request. So we have the net value, which is the net value of the purchase request. So if the purchase request is a material, then there's a need for a ship to define a ship to location, and you need to also see some of the ship to service location if there's a need for that. Then if there is a need for a follow-up document, and a follow-up document is created, you see the status of the follow-up document. Okay, for us to create a new purchase request, we need to use the click the new button and select the purchase request from the new action button. Need to cannot use this function to create a service request. So you can see the item type here cannot be changed to service. Even if you click the view all button, you will still not be able to change the process type or the item type. Okay, so for us to create a purchase request for material, we need to select the product ID. So in our previous episode, we have some list of material that has been created in the system, which are these three items: HP. So we have the HP 01, HP 02, HP 03. So we are selecting the three items. So I've selected the first one, which is this. Then I need to add row to select the other ones, adding more rows. So I'm picking the second item and I'm picking the third item. Now, very important is the quantity I'm ordering. So I need to say we are ordering 10 each. So just a quick moment, I'm going to pause the video and continue. So as a user of SAP Business by Design supply chain training, I always advise that we take cognizance of the message information here. So the message bar actually helps you to understand the status of the current document or record you are working on. So if you use the check action button, it will give you the consistency or inconsistency state of any of the record or transaction you are working on currently. Okay, so you can see here I'm being prompted to assign a ship to a service location, which I have to do by selecting the ship to location ID. So remember in our past episode, the location and service, we looked at how to create warehouse and logistics location. So we actually looked at how storage location and service locations are being determined or created. So the training actually led to the creation of this logistic area. So I'm selecting, we are using the same in this episode. So I'm selecting the same location for all. So I've selected up the location. So if I click on the check, let's see if there's a need for us to. Okay, so there are no errors. Now, very important, if you select some of these items, underneath there are some informations here, like the system is going to show us some of the basic data just the same way. Now we have a net price here. We have the organization unit. You can see full details about the pricing for this item. You can see for each item we have this record. Now the delivery information is also set, so we can uh, assign a requester. So if the purchase department have a requester from a department, they can actually select the person who is requesting for this item. They can select the name of the person responsible for this request. So if you are this kind of transaction or request is called on behalf of. So you are creating this request on behalf of a, a requester. The requester can also have access to the system and do this by themselves, and the information is assigned. Then very important is the source of supply. You can see that I did not assign the source of supply. This source of supply is actually generated from the contract that is binding the the company, I mean, you have the organization and the supplier. So whenever there's a need for us to create to procure these items, then because of the fact that there is a contract that is binding the two organization, then the system is automatically going to assign a source of supply, which is the supplier. Now you can see the contract information. So in our previous episode, we looked at how a an RFQ is created for some of this item, and also we treated the contract management. I mean, the contract based on the quotation that was awarded to the supplier. So we discovered that this supplier was actually awarded the contract, and the contract was approved by the management. And uh, from this contract, whenever we create a purchase request, automatically, because there is a contract that is binding the organization and and the supplier, then automatically the supplier's information will be assigned. Also, if you notice the prices that we did not assign a price, so the system is picking the price from the contract that was awarded. So if I click on this to see the contract information, can see the supplier information, and we can go to the document flow to see the contract status of the supplier. So this is the supplier quotation. You can go to the contract information to see the full information of the contract. Oh, so it's read out. Okay, let's use the quotation to go to the contract. So you can see from the quotation that was approved, that was awarded, these are the list of items that we have. This is the quote overview, and these are the prices. So the same price when we create the new purchase request, the system automatically assign the prices because there was a contract that was binding these items. So so you can see the prices from the contract information. You can see the prices for the first and second and third item. Okay, so the system is actually using this price based on the contract that was awarded. So to continue with the purchase request, all we need to do now is to release the request. So we can save the request and release it later if there's a need for us to do some adjustments. So you can see the document is saved, and if I release, it's going to be released for either further approval process, or it's just going to be released for the next stage of the transaction to be processed. So the purchase request is now released. So if we go back to the request, you can see this is the request. Then we can further process this request or convert it to an order. So this is actually how to create a purchase request, direct purchase request. So if you look at what we've done in this episode, you can see we have the purchase request ID 1301 line 1, 1301 line 2, 1301 line 3. So these three requests can actually uh, be bundled and converted to an order. So we are not going to work on the purchase order on this episode. Uh, we're going to take that in the purchase order episode. So on the next episode, we're going to look at how to create a service request using the shopping cart to do that. So it's also a privilege to understand how the shopping cart works in SAP Business by Design, and those who are going to be using the shopping cart for managing their request processes. So I promise to show you how to see an in-depth look of a purchase request that has to do with material. So quickly, I'm going to show you the the purchase request we created. So this is the purchase request. I'm clicking on the order. So if I click on the view all button, I usually like to use the view all button because it gives me a wide scope of the information that we already created. So we can see the three items we created. You can see the general information of this request, the total net value, the company, the currency, then the items that are involved. Then if this request is subjected to approval, you will see the approval status and the person responsible for approving this record. Then, if you want to track changes of this request, you can see the changes that are made to this request, and you can also add notes, any kind of notes, probably supplier notes. There are there are different types of notes: the approval note, the internal note, and the remark note. So I'm not going to add any notes. Then also very important is if there is an attachment, a document that is going to be attached with this request, then you can add this attachment using the attachment tab. Okay, so that is that for this episode. If you have any question, please bring it up in the comment section. And if you also would like to maybe understand more how these processes work, you can, give us a direct message or get in touch with me directly. I'll have maybe create some time to help you analyze some of the issues you're having with some of these processes, and we can take some time to maybe clear them out. All right. So thank you for watching and see you in the next episode. Bye for now.